you got the promotion, you have the experience, you've done this job 100 times, and yet there's a voice in your head that's convinced today's the day everyone finds out how you have really no idea what you're doing. That's imposter syndrome. And it's not a sign that you're actually incompetent, of course. It's a sign that your nervous system is doing something very specific, something that high achievers are particularly susceptible to. And I'm going to show you exactly what that is and how to stop letting it run your career. So today you'll get the neuroscience behind why imposter syndrome feels so real, why the people who suffer most from it are usually the most capable, and 4 concrete tools to quiet that internal fraud alarm for good. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast, and I am your host, Dr. Abby Medcalf. We are in season 3 of the Workplace Therapy with Dr. Abby Medcalf podcast, and I'm excited about it. We're reaching more people, and it's really cool. So I did an episode on the Relationships Made Easy podcast a while ago, which of course I'll link to, all about imposter syndrome in your personal life. I actually talked about it in your personal life, obviously with work too, but I really talked a lot about it in other relationships. But today we're getting nitty gritty right on work. So why do high achievers feel like frauds at work? And because it's only high achievers that have this. And I'm telling you, I've been doing this for 40 years, working in organizations, working in all kinds of different settings with all kinds of different people. And that's what I will tell you. And let me say this first. So imposter syndrome is the persistent internal experience of believing you're not as competent as others perceive you to be, despite objective evidence to the contrary. And it was first identified in 1978 by women, of course, by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. I-M-E-S. I hope that's how you say that. They noticed it showing up repeatedly in high-achieving women, but subsequent research definitely confirmed that it affects people across genders, industries, career levels, you name it. So it's not just for women, but that's where a lot of the original research is and was. And here's what makes it so insidious. The more competent you actually are, the more likely you are to experience it. And that's not a paradox. It's the direct result of how expertise works. When you're genuinely skilled at something, you're aware of everything you don't know. You understand the complexity of your field. You know where the gaps are. Someone with far less skill, they don't have that awareness. And that's what I'm sure you've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That researchers David Dunning and Justin Kruger, they documented in their now famous work, right, on the relationship between competence and self-assessment. So knowing more makes you more aware of how much more there is to know. That's I guess, yeah, that's actually a good way to say that. That awareness gets misread by your nervous system as like evidence of your inadequacy, that you don't know what you're doing. And your nervous system does something very specific with that misread. It activates a threat response. Oh, Abby's going to talk about the polyvagal system again. Yes, I am. I think I talk about it every episode because it's such a big deal. The same polyvagal system I've talked about in just about every episode, right, of the podcast, except here the threat isn't like I did the Monday morning, dread or the Sunday scaries, or it's not an annoying coworker. I've talked about it in relationship to that. It's exposure. It's the fear that someone is about to look behind the curtain and find out, you're making it up as you go. Your amygdala, that fear part of your brain, doesn't care that you have 15 years of experience and a wall of credentials. It registers the thought, I don't know enough, as danger. And it's going to fire accordingly. That's the problem. So why doesn't accomplishment make imposter syndrome go away is the question I always get asked. And again, if imposter syndrome were just a confidence problem, it would dissolve the moment you racked up enough achievements, right? But it doesn't. And the reason is really worth understanding because it's what makes this particular pattern so what we psychologists call sticky. We also use that in business terms for things that are sticky. Your nervous system is running an attribution loop that success can't touch. Every time something goes well, your brain files it under external factors. Oh, I was lucky. The timing was right. My team carried it. That kind of crap. Not that those things don't sometimes have some truth, but that's right, not the whole story. Every time something goes badly, though, it files it under you. This is true. And it's not conscious. It's not conscious. It's an automatic processing pattern that Clance identified in her original research. And it means that wins don't accumulate into confidence. They just get explained away. Each success becomes evidence of how well you've fooled everyone. And each stumble becomes the proof, you secretly feared, right? Every little stumble is oh, see, that I really am a fraud. That loop also generates two behavioral responses that feel protective, but actually make things worse. So you either over-prepare, I see you, working twice as hard as necessary to compensate for the deficit you're so convinced is there, or you self-sabotage, you procrastinating so that if something does go wrong, you can blame the lack of effort rather than your lack of ability. And again, both unconscious, both are friggin' exhausting. And neither one is going to update that underlying belief. That's the problem. It's not going to change it. Another question I get asked is imposter syndrome more common in certain workplaces? And yes, it is. And this matters because it tells you that imposter syndrome isn't just an internal problem. It's also a response to environment. That's another thing. So there's research by another woman, Amy Edmondson. She's at, I'm going to say Harvard Business School. I'm 99% sure that's true. But I will link in the notes. And whenever I say the research, and there's a great download for today, anything like that, you can get it below the video if you're watching on YouTube. And you can get it on my website, abbymedcalf.com, where I always do a full blog for every episode so that it's easy. You can go back and read the notes or whatever, but everything is listed there too. Very easy to find, abbymedcalf.com. So research by Amy Edmondson, I'm going to say Harvard Business School right now. She's done a lot of work on psychological safety. I talked about her in that episode I did. So I've referenced that before. Her work shows that imposter syndrome is significantly amplified in workplaces with low psychological safety. So where people don't feel it's safe to speak up, make mistakes, admit that they're uncertain about something. When the culture is signaling that errors are punished and vulnerability is weakness, your nervous system has genuinely good reasons to stay on high alert, right? The fraud alarm, it's not irrational in that context, of course. It's a reasonable adaptation to an unreasonable environment. So that's what happens. Now, imposter syndrome is also more prevalent in what researchers call identity-threatening contexts, workplaces where you're a demographic minority, where you're newer than everyone else, or where the culture is heavily competitive and comparative. So, and I can tell you that, right? I'm an organizational psychologist with 40 years working inside and outside organizations of every size, every type. And I've watched imposter syndrome really run rampant in high status, high pressure environments. Again, not because the people there are less capable, but because those environments are engineered to make people feel like they're one mistake away from losing their seat at the table. And that's a big problem. And again, if you're the only Black person, the only woman, the only something else, right? There definitely are things that are gonna push imposter syndrome. Now, what's the difference between imposter syndrome and actual incompetence, right? I get asked this question probably more often than all the rest now that I think about it. And I want to answer it directly because the answer is, I hope, reassuring for you. Genuinely incompetent people, I don't want to say never, so I'm going to say don't usually worry about being incompetent. I'm going to say that again. And I've worked with many, 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 many incompetent people. They never, I'm going to say never, I've never had one of them with imposter syndrome. Not once, not one time. I know. So I'm just saying, and this is from the research too. This is the Dunning-Kruger finding like working in your favor this time, I guess, right? The anxiety you feel, the hypervigilance, the constant self-monitoring, the need to check and recheck your work, the questioning constantly, what are people thinking? What are they saying? What am I doing? These are the behaviors of someone who cares deeply about doing good work and has enough expertise to understand what good work requires. Imposter syndrome is almost always, I really believe this, a signal of conscientiousness, not inadequacy. It's just getting misread. The other reliable indicator, I would say, is specificity. Imposter syndrome tends to be domain specific and situation triggered. You feel it in high stakes presentations, in rooms full of people, maybe that you consider more senior. When you're doing something for the first time, believe it or not, it's not a global sense of being like worthless. There's times when you do feel like, oh, that was good. Maybe that's fleeting, but you do. It's a targeted alarm that fires under specific conditions. Actual skill deficits show up differently, as they really show up as consistent patterns of poor outcomes in specific areas, not as a pervasive sense of dread, right? That coexists with a strong track record. That's the difference there. Trust me, if I've had people, and I'm not even, and you know what's funny? So I'm going to have clients that are going to listen to this, and they're all going to think I'm talking about them, all of them, even though I'm not talking about all of them, because I work with so many super competent people who the whole reason they're getting help, the whole reason they're coming to see me is to be better, is that growth mindset, is all that. But they often feel like frauds in their positions. I have people I've worked with who have climbed the ladder like nobody's business at really competitive, difficult companies, have really achieved, are amazing, getting kudos and continuing to think they're imposters. It's unbelievable. There's zero evidence of it. Now, yeah, there's been some failures along the way because there have to be. Yet they still, all the evidence the other way, it's like they just can't believe it. It's truly amazing when I'm talking to them. Okay, so let's talk about 4 tools to quiet the fraud alarm. Okay, I'm going to give you 4 tools right now. And I have a great download for today. So if this is speaking to you, you want the download. It's free. And each of the tools I'm going to give you targets a different part of the cycle, which I think is important. So tool number 1 is what I'm going to call attribution auditing. And this is directly addressing the attribution problem that keeps imposter syndrome sort of fed. So for the next 2 weeks, every time something goes well at work, write down why. Next 2 weeks, and I mean anything. Meetings started on time, they ended on time. They, you finished a project, you whatever. Anything that goes well. Anything. Just a meeting that went well, where people seemed to really vibe and where there was a lot of creativity in something. But I need you to write down why. Not a vague, oh, I got lucky, or, it just was Tuesday, so everybody was zoned in. Nope. But a specific, honest accounting. You're attributing, right? Attribution. I want a specific and an honest accounting. What skill did you use? What preparation did you do? What decisions did you make that contributed to the outcome? Again, we're not looking to inflate your ego. That is, trust me, I wish we could have some of that. There's none of that. You're correcting a cognitive distortion that you have. This is a cognitive distortion that we are going to correct with evidence, but in real time. Your brain has been systematically discounting your contributions, and this is helping you retrain it to record them accurately. Okay, that's what you're doing. You're recording them accurately. There's a lot of research on cognitive reappraisal, which is what we call this, that shows that this kind of deliberate attribution work, this kind of work, genuinely shifts the neural patterns that are underlying your self-assessment. And it takes a minute. It's not going to happen in a week, but that's where I want you to start. I know it's a pain in the ass. Shut up and do it. I say with love. Tool number 2 is normalization. It works by breaking the isolation that makes imposter syndrome so powerful, I think, because one of the reasons imposter syndrome feels so convincing is that it thrives in silence. You look around the room and everyone else looks confident and competent, and you're quietly convinced you're the only one white knuckling it, right? There's really good research by Basima Tewfik, Tewfik at MIT, who found that people who worry most about being seen as incompetent are also the people their colleagues rate most highly on interpersonal effectiveness. Do you love it? Because the self-monitoring that comes with imposter syndrome makes you a more attentive, careful, collaborative colleague. Knowing that, I hope, will change your story a little. You're surrounded by people who are also quietly convinced they don't fully belong, the competent ones. And your awareness of that is part of what makes you good at your job, right? The third tool I'm going to call facts, not feelings. This tool is separating the feeling from the fact. And it's the most, I think, immediately useful one for those high stake kind of moments. So when that fraud alarm fires, and you're going to have to be mindful to notice, when that fraud alarm is firing, let's say before a big presentation or a difficult conversation, your nervous system is generating a feeling of exposure and inadequacy. And that feeling is real. It doesn't mean the thought behind it is true. It just means the feeling's real. So a simple practice is this. When you notice the feeling, name it. Name it specifically. Not, I'm a fraud, right? But I'm having the thought that I'm a fraud, and my body's responding to that as if it's a fact, right? I don't research, I just do. Well, I kind of do, but you know what I mean. Researchers call this cognitive diffusion, and it's a technique that was developed within the acceptance and commitment therapy model, ACT model. And it creates just enough distance between you and the thought to stop it from running the show. That's what we're trying to do. And then tool number 4 is mindfulness. I know. Yeah. I don't care that you're sick of hearing it. I really don't care. How can this be the answer to everything, Abby? Because it is. A consistent mindfulness practice directly reduces amygdala reactivity, which means the fraud alarm fires with less intensity and you can recover from it faster. It doesn't eliminate the thoughts, okay? It changes your relationship to them. If you do not have the mindfulness starter kit at this point, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's free. Just download it. Even 10 minutes a day makes a measurable difference. And when I say 10 minutes a day, like the mindful practice, it's not even 10. I got to tell you, it's minutes a day. Over the course of a day, you'll do a minute here, a minute there, 30 seconds here, 30 seconds there. As you're doing the mindfulness, it adds up over the course of a day to maybe 10 minutes. You're killing me. You're killing me, kid. You got to do it. Got to do it. So let me wrap up. Imposter syndrome isn't evidence that you're in over your head. It's evidence that you're paying attention, that you care about the quality of your work, and that you have enough expertise to understand its complexity. Okay? So those 4 tools I gave you, the attribution auditing, the normalization, diffusing the thought from the feeling, and mindfulness, all 4 of those interrupt the cycle at a different point. So if you use them consistently, the fraud alarm maybe doesn't disappear, but it's going to lose its authority. That's what we're trying to do. It becomes background noise instead of the loudest voice in your head. Okay. So putting today's lesson into action, today's free download is something I'm calling the Imposter Syndrome Field Guide. It's just a 1-page thing. I just like to come up with cute names. It's a 1-page tool for catching the fraud alarm in real time and redirecting it, right? Because with the free downloads, I always try to think, okay, what's the very next thing someone's going to want to be able to do? What's the next step? And that to me is the next step. So again, you can get it below the video. If you're watching on YouTube, you can get it at abbymedcalf.com at this, go to this episode, and you'll see it right there along with, again, all the notes, all the things. And I think it's good if you really suffer from imposter syndrome, I would beg you to even print out that blog or have it somewhere that you can get to it easily. It's like a 5-minute read, and just read it. Read it again. Remind yourself. Okay, that's it. Have an amazing week. Thank you for hanging out with me in season 3. I've got a lot of good episodes coming, so stay tuned.